Thank you to all of the officials who are here with us today. I have two questions, which hopefully we can deal with in the appointed time. The first is, when did you find out that you were coming to this committee? When were you told?
Last week.
After the ministers declined to come?
That's correct.
The reference to Five Eyes, I think, is helpful and of considerable interest. The balancing that you referenced between the security interests of Canada and the humanitarian promises of Canada is also very interesting. Is Canada unique? Is there something about us that makes us unique so that 4 of the 5 Eyes have managed to address this devastating humanitarian crisis by allowing action that Canada's refusing to allow? What makes us unique in this regard?
When it comes to the criminal code, I will defer to my justice colleagues.
I think I wouldn't suggest we're unique in any broader sense, but from a technical sense, the legislation at issue here was passed in 2001. It hasn't been substantially amended since then. We do not have in our legislation the kinds of mechanisms that I think some of the witnesses referred to. Australia and UK amended their legislation. The United States has long had a system which allows directives issued with respect to its sanctions and terrorist financing. And other allies I'm not familiar with, for example, exact details of the EU or South Korea or Japan, but they all have their own mechanisms. So I can't say that we're unique, but I can say that many of the other countries that have been referenced before this committee, I believe, have countries with a different legal mechanism that gives more flexibility for exceptions than ours does.
Is there time?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so for over 20 years, we've known that Canada has a highly restrictive legislative regime on this point, and we haven't changed anything. Were you able to hear Professor Roach and Mr. Chowdhury? I'm getting nods all around. Thank you. What's the fastest fix here? There are different options. This doesn't have to be either or. What is actually feasible? 1 million children, minimum, are facing starvation. An estimated 6 million Afghans are on the brink of starvation right now as winter begins. What is the most effective step from an official perspective in order to fix this?
I can't say what decision the government might make in balancing the legal and policy perspectives of human rights, the atrocious humanitarian situation, and the legal situation. I can say there's been identified a change to the criminal code. That's in some ways analogous to what's been described with what's happened in the United Kingdom and Australia, and it exists already in the United States. Some of the other options may be more challenging from some perspectives, although I appreciate the desire to have with powerful advocates, as Mr. Chowdhury and Mr. Roach, as to how things can be solved. I'd like to perhaps remind or note that the Canadian government doesn't have the authority to reinterpret legislation as it sees fit. These are criminal code provisions that are charged by police of jurisdiction, decided by independent prosecutors, adjudicated by courts. And for example, Mr. Roach made reference to whether the courts would strike down some of these provisions unconstitutional. That may well be the case, but there have been no cases on that. There's been no prosecutions, as far as I'm aware, under these provisions since that time. So, of course, independent clients or anyone can follow the advice of Mr. Roach and Mr. Chowdhury and with their own resources do whatever they see is appropriate. The challenge, as I understand for them, and understandably, is what does the Canadian government do in terms of its balancing of legal and policy risks. And so some of the options laid forward may be something that the government could consider, but others would raise some challenges.
I'll go on round 2, please.